right, good afternoon, everyone. Could we all introduce ourselves?
I'm Nicholas Santangelo,
And you are a
sophomore.
sophomore.
I'm Matthew Scipione, and I'm a junior.
Matthew.
Michelle Gash, Assistant Superintendent.
John Castellano, Network Specialist.
Nikki Horler, Principal.
Valerie Henning Piedmont, Superintendent.
Peter Lamoureux, Instructional Technology Specialist.
Okay. This is the third podcast that we've done so far. In another few weeks after we come back from the vacation, the administrators have partnered, and each of us is going to we're going to be a part of a podcast of all six chapters. And it'll be a way for others who can't either participate in a book study or those who are maybe interested but just don't have time to read the book right away to be able to engage with the conversations around why this book most likely to succeed, preparing our kids for the innovation era, is so important. And as we talk about, how we're structuring education in the district to actually help young people to meet the expectations and demands of this innovation-driven era. And this is the era that you're in now, that you'll go into where, you're going to be perfecting the driverless cars. You're going to be perfecting the drones and, the robots that, take the place of human workers. So get ready. You ready for that era?
Ready as we'll ever be.
We'll see.
So, Nicholas, is there anything that stands out in the first chapter that you want to that caught your attention, or that made you think about what it means to be a student now in Brewster High School?
Well, I found kind of the progression of the educational system to be interesting.
That 1893 business?
Yeah, how we progressed from kind of vocational, like you train to be an artisan or a specialist of some kind, to being a factory worker. They teach you the bare minimum, to being where we are now, where they try to teach you everything that you could possibly need for your life. I think that's kind of interesting.
It is interesting. And then what do you think about the notion that reliance on content is no longer something that's going to be really set you up for success in this innovation-driven era?
I think it makes sense. I mean, I think that the content is important, but I think what's most important is the students, us, learning what we want to do and how we're going to do it. I think that's the most important thing, because a lot of the stuff that we learn, a lot of the content that we learn isn't going to be useful in our lives, as many people have pointed out. So I think that focusing on what we need and what we want to learn is the most important thing, as opposed to trying to learn everything
all the time.
Yes.
Rather than like teaching to a test or a set of a rubric, we can go into fields that interest us or that will lead us to better paths later on in life.
So where is, so think about your experience so far in the district, because this is not only something that's going to affect the high school, this is going to affect what a kindergartner does. What do you think are our challenges as a school district? As I said, you're in high school now, so that's your most current kind of experience, but you've been here since kindergarten. So what do you think are the biggest challenges for a school district to be able to set children up to function in this innovation-driven era that no longer values content in the same way that most of us experience content, and as you describe content, that there's a lot of time spent learning lots of things just in case you need it. So where do you see what's our challenge as a school district, in your opinion? Because we value your perspective as young people.
Well, I think a big obstacle is going to be just the change and the adaptation, because the people have already been in this system for, however amount of time, even if it's just 2 or 3 years, they're accustomed to what they've been doing for those 2 or 3 years. So I think the adjustment that they're going to have to go through may be an issue. But I think for the people that are younger, like the kindergartners, like you said, or the first graders that haven't become accustomed, I think if we make that change, it's going to be for the better for them.
How about you, Matthew?
I think that the biggest problem we're going to have is getting students to actually try to do their work, because now with everything being out online, answer keys and everything, people can just look up answers to anything that they don't know, and they're going to just not learn the information, but they'll just copy it and parrot it from wherever they got it, and they're not going to really retain any of what they learned. I think that'll be a pretty big challenge to try and overcome.
So there's so much out there that they won't really have the, like, sort of the filtering mechanism to kind of, delve into and try to figure out, like, what's really accurate here and what I should be thinking about. Is that kind of more
Yeah,
or less
right,
what
right,
you're
right.
talking
They're
about?
not going to be able to, like, interpret a question and see what it's asking, because if they're having trouble with it or something, they'll just be like, I'll just Google it or whatever.
Okay.
So they're going to rather just not do it.
Okay.
That's an important shift for teachers to make, is to provide assessments or challenges for students that would acknowledge the fact that you have those resources, and then really ask you to process that rather than just the content mastery. Later in the book, it talks about assessments or testing with open device or open book, and that's a powerful way where you acknowledge that that's a resource that students have available, and why not embrace it, which is important.
Ms. Gosh and Ms. Horler, what are
So,
your thoughts?
Nick or Matt, what would be one change that you think that we could make, either as a system, or really any adult in the system? What's one change that we could make to better prepare you for what you're going to need in the years to come?
I think that you guys have been doing a good job of kind of integrating this new technology and integrating these new ideas that people have been coming up with. And I think that more focus on that kind of untraditional way of learning, such as playing a game or doing an activity as opposed to sitting down and reading a textbook, would be a much better application of our abilities.
So more active learning
Yes.
type of environment.
How do you see the teachers adapting to this change?
Well, the teachers kind of use technology to their benefit, but some of them don't utilize it to the full potential. Like, I know in math, we don't really use a smartboard, and it's set up in the back of the room, and we only use the whiteboard. And there's this old pull-down
Projector screen thing?
Yeah, it's kind of like projector screen, but it's like graph paper, but expo marker thing, and we use that when graphing, when we can use the smartboard to easier project that on like a Google document or a PowerPoint slide or something like that. And some teachers use the technology amazing.
For example, do you have an example of?
Well, most teachers now put lesson plans up on a Google Slides presentation,
Okay.
and then they put that either on the board as they're going through the day, or not the day, the period.
Period.
And they put it on their Google Classroom site. So even if you're not in class, you can still know what the class did that day, and you can catch up on the work that way, instead of coming back to school the next day and being like, oh my God, what I miss, and trying to rush to get it all done.
Your example speaks to what Nicholas mentioned with the just the inertia. That with the way that people have always done it isn't necessarily the best way, and I think it's really important that we have the support of administration here to challenge people to take risk and to change their way of thinking and be innovative for your collective benefits.
We have a new member who joined our podcast. You want to say your name and your grade?
My name is Joya, and I'm a sophomore.
Okay. Well, actually, we started talking about chapter 1, and the kickoff conversation was about sort of now content, and the coverage of content has been like the predominant way in which students have been students. I mean, that you learn that content is so critical, but yet in the innovation-driven era, content's not that as critical. It's these other skills, these 21st century skills where, to help young people to be critical thinkers and problem solvers and great communicators and collaborators, where, perseverance and resilience, and to be flexible and adaptive, and, be civic and socially minded, or have a sense of civic and ethical responsibility. So that's hugely different. So how often do you think, based upon that whole laundry list of skills, which are, lots of districts are looking at those in some way or another. They have different, some of them interchange certain things, some stick with what's considered to be the 4 C's: collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. But critical thinking and collaboration and communication always appear, and you'll hear, if it's not perseverance or resilience, you'll hear grit. So that's pretty much the sort of compilation of these, what's called these cross-cutting 21st century skills. So if you think about your own experience as a high school student, or maybe it was as a middle schooler, or maybe it was at CV Star or JFK, how often or to what degree are you encountering those skills in your experience as a student? You pick anything from that list: critical thinking, communication, collaboration. You pick something and tell us sort of how often, to what degree, do you experience that as a student? Julia.
I feel like it varies a lot depending on the classroom that I'm in. Some classrooms definitely focus on the critical thinking aspect and the open learning and getting to interact with one another. And then other classrooms, I'll be sitting there and it's strictly just listening to the teacher talk and trying to retain information, which I find very hard. So for me, it's half and half, and I'd like to see a lot more of the hands-on learning and the different opportunities, different classes, than just the strictly math, science, social studies, and English.
Thank you.
I think
Matthew.
Group work in classrooms is very important because it allows multiple people to focus onto one problem or a set of problems and learn from each other. Say one person knows one thing about the topic and other people in that group don't understand it. That person can help explain, but another person might know a different piece of information about that topic. The group work is kind of good, kind of bad. If it's done correctly and it's organized, it's a good tool. But if it's kind of chaotic and everyone's just talking about, oh, what'd you have for lunch today, kind of not relevant information, it won't be as effective. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of information will be shared amongst the class.
Mm-hmm. Is there a fair amount of that? What I'll put in the category is collaboration light.
Polite.
Well, some classes more than others we do group work in. Like in my biology class, I know we do a lot of group work, and we focus on that a lot. Learning from other students is good. But in math, we don't really do as much group work per se, but if you have a question, you can turn to a neighbor and ask, and we usually do it that way.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Nicholas?
Well, I agree with Matt. I think that group work is important. I think collaboration is a very important skill that we have to learn, and it does. It depends on the class and the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I just had social studies last period, right before I came here, and we held a big trial. Mm-hmm. So our class was split into three different teams. One team was the judge, the other one was the prosecution, the other was the defense.
Mm-hmm.
For Jackson?
For Mullane, world history. So basically, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it required us all to work as a team mm-hmm. to debate with the other side, mm-hmm. where it was very interesting seeing how we all mixed and how our ideas created this one big claim, and how we had to all support it. It was just a great example of cooperation, communication, and how we applied all of our knowledge and skills into making this claim. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it was a very good activity.
Sounds like it was very exciting.
Yeah, it was, and everyone was engaged. It's nothing. Everyone was engaged and ready to learn. It was a better way of teaching than sitting mm-hmm. around and listening to a teacher talk.
Mm, yeah.
I kind of like listening to teachers talk because, well, you laugh, but it's really, it just presents the information in a very on point way, and you can take notes. And most teachers use the assistance of a PowerPoint, or they write notes on the board, and you can copy it down and later go back and look over. And if you don't know something, you can say, oh, let me just write this down in my notebook and ask the teacher tomorrow about it. If for the question, they can go over it in class.
Exactly, okay. So, but imagine if you had to take that information, Matthew, and actually create something with it. Like, would it be of interest to you to have that as a way for you to kind of, not just to know it and to get the notes, but then to have the teacher say, well, so your assessment is going to be that you've got to create a solution to this, and you draw upon that information. Is that something that you have experienced, or something that you think would be of interest to you?
Yeah, it would be a useful teaching tool, because it would apply what you have taken and what you know to a problem that you need to solve. And I think using the information helps a student better remember it, or recognize it as fact, and like going through everything with it. Again, group work with that could be useful. If all the students get notes, some people might emphasize in their whatever they took notes on different points than another person, and when they come together they can elaborate more on certain things to each other, because everyone has different viewpoints, what interests them most and stuff.
Sure. Hi, Luca, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. We were talking about this, that's the set of like skills, these, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, perseverance, grit, resilience, all of those skills that are considered 21st century skills. And Julia, Matthew, and Nicholas were sharing, were they responding to a question of, so to what degree do you experience those now as a student, whether it's, something now or something that was in previously in middle school or CV Star. So to what degree do you as a student engage in pick whatever one you want to? How often and to what degree does that happen?
I wouldn't say it's like too common, but I mean it's definitely gotten more and more over the years. Like last year with my English class with Mr. Yer, like he required to do, like for us to do like a lot of critical thinking with the outline of his curriculum and all that. So it's like getting bigger and bigger.
Is more of that's happening?
Yeah.
Okay. We're glad to hear that.
Like you said, that has to do with critical thinking. We could be given a situation, and then you have to analyze it yourself using what you've been given, not just to give A, B, C, or D.
To guess.
That would be the smarter way of going about giving a test or an exam.
Exactly.
Yeah. Explain yourself questions are more valuable than, okay, here's a blurb about a topic, and now which statement is correct about the blurb. It doesn't really make sense to just have them read the test and be like, oh yeah, the answer is this because the test explains it to me, basically. It would be more useful to have them actually memorize what they need to know, like certain charts or graphs in biology we need to know, like different reaction stages, and then they will present that information in the chart or graph that we're used to seeing it, but then they'll say, interpret it in this way. And I think that question is much more useful than the standard.
Could you react to this? This is on page 27. In our efforts to fix education, we've taken a course of action that extirpates the creative spirit and confidence from our youth while drilling them on frivolous things like memorizing the definition of expurgate. Exactly. When are you going to use that? For the SAT verbal exam, over and over in classroom after classroom, on assignment after assignment, we condition kids to look for the right answer instead of encouraging them to come up with multiple creative approaches. When they ask, you don't ask this question, when will I ever use this? We respond, trust me, this will come in handy down the road. Except it won't, and they know it. You know it won't come in handy down the road. And so kids treat school as a set of hoops to to jump through instead of a vehicle for developing the skills and resources needed to accomplish their dreams. The worst part is we set these creativity killing priorities in a world that is screaming, we need creative problem solvers, but our education system has deaf ears. What's your reaction to that? Is it accurate?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's pretty accurate.
How do we change this?
It's kind of hard to, because it's like hard to get away from like things in math. You need to follow certain like fundamentals to get certain answers, and like it's hard to get around that because you need that in order to do this. And like there's that part, like Nick said, like you have to memorize like stuff on a test. Like that's the purpose of the test, is to memorize stuff and like contain it. But getting around the part where you need to be able to figure another way out quickly, or like with a group of people, like you have to be able to like have those skills too to work in the real world. And that's like the hard thing to apply to the test,
is that you know that there's certain information that's needed, but then, and right now, the way that we think students are remembering it is because they know there's going to be a test, but yet there are not enough experiences where they actually take that information and solve some real problems, or solve something, or create something.
Yeah. Because sometimes like the main goal for like certain tests, like I'm just memorizing it for the test and get through the test, and not just like contain the information. It's just to get like the grade and then get on with it.
I find that people do that a lot throughout all classes.
And I agree. Like I read in the book how you take the test and you know everything and you score well, and then afterwards I forget everything that I learned. And that pretty
Wasn't that
much has
interesting,
happened
right?
to me all the way up until this point. The year that I come back, I remember nothing from the year before. And that's like not okay. I'm not happy about that.
Exactly.
But as long as I pass the class and I get by, then I guess I am happy, because that's what we've come to like know. But I feel like if we had an equal amount of the memorization, but then also the open learning and the critical thinking part, then that would be useful instead of just memorization. That's not.
How prepared for college or real life do you think you are right at this moment?
That's a hard question, Ms. Euler.
I mean, they're two different questions.
They are.
There's for college is an extension of school. College is going to be structured like school for as long as we have school structured like
I'm
this.
so sorry.
So-
You're
so
right. I'm so sorry.
If you're going to college, then we did a great job preparing you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
It'll, you'll just do the same thing you've always done in the past, which is memorize.
Oh, that's so sad.
Kind of flash memorize what you need to know,
Flash
dump it
memorize.
all onto the test paper, and then
It's
forget
so
about
true.
it.
Call it a day.
It's-
Only
yeah.
this time around, though, you're going to have a big bill at the end of
Yeah,
it.
There you go.
exactly. Yeah.
And the flash memorize thing is very true, because we have so many tests on every day, all week, throughout the whole school year. So it's not just a test a week; it's a couple tests per day, like quizzes all the time. So how are we supposed to do that for the rest of our lives?
Yeah. And to the
Sad but
question,
true.
preparing us for the real
Sure.
world, a lot of teachers say that this is our real world now, is going to school, because it is to a degree, but when we get out and on our own is the real question I think we should have. When we're on our own, are we prepared? I'm not too sure if schooling is doing that correctly for us.
Like I don't know how to write a check.
That's
What
something
do
my
you
mom
mean
had to
you don't know how
teach
to write
me,
a
and I asked her why she was teaching me and not a class in school.
Because we have to quiz you. Come on.
We don't teach script anymore. Cursive
that's
is not taught
awful.
anymore.
That's
Yeah, mine's
a big
awful.
thing.
I do remember a little from 3rd grade.
The
But are
only-
you going to need that? Let me tell you. Let me tell you
Yes,
something.
we will,
Let me
yes.
tell you something.
To write a check.
Yeah,
to write a check.
or sign anything.
When
the only
you-
thing I can write in script is my name.
Yeah.
But you know what? When you sign, but you probably haven't done this yet, but when you have to sign on like an iPad or something on the screens now, you no longer have to write on a piece of paper. You sign on the screen.
Yeah.
That's not my signature. I mean, I do something with my nail on it, and it'll take it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll
because
take
if
it.
you go to like the store, like, and you're
I can't
getting
make it.
food for your family, like I've done this before, and I've had my parents' credit card, and I just sign their name, and then I'm good to go.
It's not going to ask you, is this Mr. Riolo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, doesn't care.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
So I don't know
I
how
thought you were trying to
often
sing.
you're going to need script. I mean, I don't want to scare you,
Yeah.
but I don't know, given all the emerging technologies, right? I don't know. Who would have thought of driverless cars, right?
No,
Like, would you have ever imagined that?
I'm just starting driving.
Yeah.
I want to keep doing
You
it.
wanna keep driving.
Yeah,
You don't want driverless.
No, I don't.
You might, now this is another interesting thing, is a segue. The buses are coming?
Really?
I can start.
Yeah. One more thing about college, as Ms. Hoyler kicked that off. So on page 33, it talks about like these different views. It's actually the category is like the modern caste system. So in category 1, there's one set of careers or roles, and then category 2 is the second. So tell us which category you value to be that you need the most education or has the most prestige in society. So physics. A physicist from Princeton with a PhD, a chemist with a Harvard master's, or an English professor with a Stanford PhD, a master electrician, a master chef, or a superb 8th grade English teacher. Which one of those would you choose and why?
What's the most important?
Well, for you, like, what do you value? Like, what would you choose, and then why would you choose it? So, physicist with a PhD from Princeton, a chemist with a master's from Harvard, an English professor with a PhD from Stanford, a superb 8th grade English teacher, a master chef, or a master electrician.
I would say based off of how everyone feels right now, and myself, probably the top 2, just because we're taught to look at those as a higher standard of education.
Physicist and the chemist.
Hmm.
I would pick those two as well, just because of the schools and the
Mhm.
connections from the schools.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
I would go with the superb 8th grade English teacher.
Why?
I think that if we set a strong foundation for education, that you don't have to be necessarily the smartest person to go and do everything, but if you understand enough to start being creative and looking at things in a different way, then I think that the education system will do its job if you can do that, because that'll open up different pathways for inventors, or like you said, the PhD physicist or chemist or whatever, to go explore and figure out new technologies down the road.
But is one being a physicist more important than being a master electrician?
No.
Or
You need both of them.
you need both of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think the point that these authors were making here was, that vocational education, which would be something like or someone pursuing that would, be more like an electrician or a master chef. You'd find those as vocational trades. Those are sort of looked down upon in society. Do you feel that way? The electrician is considered less important than the chemist. Although 2 weeks ago, the electrician ranked. That was the most important person in the state for us, because that's the only person that could have fixed that. Nobody else.
I think that you hear about the PhDs and physics people and chemistry geniuses more than you do the everyday standard electrician guy
Right.
that knows what he's doing, though, about doing his job. Like, if you ask the PhD in physics how to wire a house for electricity to get it to every room, he might be like, no, I don't know how to do that. Why would I need to know? But the master electrician would know how to do that because that's his job. Everyone would have their set professional area of expertise.
So you're saying they're equally important?
Yeah, everyone is. Yeah.
But, well, I mean, they're technically equally important, but it's not I wouldn't say it's fair like that, because if you're looking at something like the fashion industry, like the CEO is gonna do what's best for his company to make the most profit for him,
Mm-hmm.
but the people in like Cambodia that are making shirts for $2 a day or $1 a day are viewed extremely poorly. They work in terrible like conditions every single day. There's chemicals in the air,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not valued at all by the company. They're just doing what's best for the company, and that's like everyone kind of has their role, and they're trying to get people to buy this because it's cheap, it looks good, this,
Mhm.
but the people on the low end of the company aren't valued that importantly,
Mhm.
but they are extremely important to the company, because if you didn't have those people, the company wouldn't be able to run.
Exactly. That's a great point. That's a great point.
And that speaks to the importance of the skills that we're reinforcing along with critical thinking and collaboration, such as, you know, what they call the non-cognitive skills, right? The
Mhm.
civic and ethical responsibility,
Mhm.
social emotional balance.
So, to wrap this up, any final points that you'd like to make? Anything, any lasting thoughts you want to share?
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I
You-
think
we covered it all?
Yeah, I
I
think
think
we covered
we're
everything, yeah.
heading in the right direction with these conversations, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if we can institute some of the things that we proposed, it would make the system and society better.
Yeah,
Well, that's what we're going to try to do.
that's the hard part.
It is. It
It's-
is.
Yes.
It is. But that's why we wanted your voices and your perspectives so that you could help us to do that. So thank you very much again. And we'll end with saying who we are.
I'm Luke Ariola.
Nicholas Santangelo.
Matthew Scipione.
And Julia Villani.
Thank you so much, along with
Michelle Gosh.
John Castellano.
Nikki Horler.
Valerie Henning Piedmont. Thank you again. Goodbye.